Okay, good, we're good. Good afternoon, this is the Town of Madison Conservation Commission meeting of May 1st, 2025. First item is to call the meeting to order. And I don't think we need elevation of alternates because we have a quorum. First item is approval of the minutes of April 3rd, 2025. Any comments, any issues with that?
I'll make a motion to approve minutes.
I'll second that. All in favor? Yes.
I wasn't there.
All right, then I'm looking for people to say yes or no.
Abstain, I wasn't here.
All right, look alive, please.
Okay, it passes.
I'm an alternate, right? I'm not getting elevated, so I don't vote.
Well, you can nod.
Okay.
Tim is not here, but public comment. Any public comment? Thank you.
Nope, that's what I'm here for.
All right. Old business, Tim has submitted his budget, which we have an opportunity to review at this point. Any comments, issues? We seem to be making a lot of good progress. Tim is doing what I consider a really good job. He's very thorough with his property reviews, his site visits. And I think he's very active with respect to items that we need to do. So I'll make a motion, we approve the budget.
I'll second that. In the amount of $4,260.
Right. All in favor, or yes?
Aye.
Yes. Okay. Chain of Ponds update. I'd like the group here to approve the letter that I drafted. Hopefully you've read it. If not, you need to read it.
I did format, but I didn't know if you wanted it in format, that's why I did that.
That's fine.
Okay.
That's good.
I just guessed for you.
Okay, I make a motion to approve the letter.
Has this letter been sent?
No.
Not yet?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yes. All against? Anybody against? Okay, letter's approved. I can now hand it to you. Don't need to draft.
Okay.
No, I'm abstaining
There you go.
from that.
Thank you.
I'll give you a minute to read it before I,
Marcia abstained from the vote.
Marcia.
And you have to state why.
I have to say why, because I don't understand the rationale behind it completely. I know that we are been anxious to have the language from the other donors so that we could work it into the easement, but I thought that was still going to happen.
Circulate another copy. That's it. I have this one.
I have one.
Yeah, that,
I guess, did we see the email response from April 28th that made you believe that the negotiations had broken down? That went out to us?
I think it was attached, should be
To
attached.
the documents, yeah.
It's attached. It should be in the agreement.
Attached to the letter.
So the email from Upper Saco Valley was, I just
Attached to
don't
the
remember
letter.
seeing it.
I think it's attached to all the documents.
If I asked you, that's
Yeah.
right, yes.
Right.
I definitely saw it.
Yep.
the other night.
Yep. Everything was attached.
Is it in this packet?
Yeah, it's attached to the letter. There's nothing in the letter. The third. Should be in there.
The April 28th letter is included in your package.
And the email is right
It's attached.
So this is from the Source
All right,
Water
so-
Protection Coordinator?
We've received your communications, and the issue for us is that for me in particular, was that one of the donors indicated that you made a statement that the negotiations had broken down. And only reacting to what the text of the letter is in terms of what actually went on. So we have prepared a statement to them that we're prepared to send out tomorrow, which would be to indicate that we disagree with the characterization that we have, that negotiations have broken down. And we described the fact that we have made every effort to communicate with you and negotiate with you. However, you have not made a comment on any single issue, none, absolutely none. And that as a result of that, we believe that you're operating in a way that is inappropriate. And the difficulty we have is that what you're suggesting means that we don't have a conservation easement as part of the arrangement at the closing, and that there's some alternative process that you're suggesting. At least that's what's indicated from the donor as well as in your letter. So I'm suggesting that as a result of us sending out, and we intend to send out a similar letter to the other donors that we're aware of. There are several that are anonymous, so obviously we can't send them out to them. So we're at a point where you have to decide what you'd like to do. We're okay with the fact that if you don't want to talk with us, life can go on. We'll make a determination at some point, if you ever want to talk with us, to decide as to whether or not we're interested in entering into a conservation easement with you. However, if the donor's statement is true, you have made a gross misrepresentation of where we are. So you have the ability to communicate with us, make a decision as to where you want to go. And, you know, I mean, we could hold a special meeting as a result of the communication we received from you. So if you want to communicate with us, we're ready to engage in a discussion and negotiation. If not, we'll let nature take its course. You guys decide whether or not you're able to arrange financing after your donors receive that information. So we'll move on.
Who wants to go first?
Yeah, I'm just curious, who told you that using that language that the negotiations had broken down?
It's in the text.
Which,
In your letter text.
yeah, but I mean,
I think it was probably,
that didn't come directly from us, that language, so.
It was an inquiry to us.
From,
From,
my actual statement to this person who's with the Drinking Water Groundwater Trust Fund.
Right.
Laura, we at Markham, we actually submitted a proposal to change our grant agreement, well, I should probably back up. What precipitated this whole thing was a grant agreement from the Drinking Water Groundwater Trust Fund, and it was all tied to the conservation easement.
Yeah.
And we've been trying to negotiate the terms of the conservation easement for over a year now. And
With who?
with you,
You haven't ever sent a comment on anything. We have sent you a document that we reviewed your draft. We have not received a single comment
we
from you.
received your final draft, which you were
It
working on.
was not a final draft, it's a draft of your
But we
draft,
received
your
that in
preliminary draft.
March.
This is the March,
I sent that to our attorney.
yeah?
He has reviewed that easement, and we have concerns, and we feel that there's further negotiations that need to be done to that version. But our attorney doesn't want to work with the Conservation Commission as a whole. He prefers to work attorney to attorney to have the negotiations between our attorneys.
We haven't talked with our attorney since we don't have an understanding of where you are. And we have not received any communications whatsoever about any position that we've taken. So we don't know whether or not you don't like the color of the stripes on the parking lot or whatever. So we have no idea where you are, absolutely none. And we have communicated with you that we are able to respond and negotiate with you in a timely manner in order for you to be able to close. You've been silent on any of that. Now we get a letter indicating that there's an alternative, that you can close without this arrangement, and that you'll negotiate a conservation easement after closing. So now we're at a point where you don't need to have a conversation with us. That's what the letter says, essentially.
May I just interject for a moment? I'm Eric White. I'm the author of the letter.
Right.
And if that's how the letter came across, I am incredibly sorry. That's not the intention of what the letter, of my letter. So if I can share what the intention is there and some background. Is that okay to share?
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, I do want to say I'm sorry if that's how it came across. We think this is a fantastic project. We really want to work with you on making this project successful. The intention of the letter is essentially to say we have received word from one of our funders, the Drinking Water Groundwater Trust Fund, that said, as Linda was saying, they need to get a final, or put the approval process in the works, which is a review process that comes up on May 5th. In that letter, the materials they sent us talked about everything being settled around the easement, which we know is still being negotiated. There's language in the easement that you sent us that our attorney has said we need to work that out. We do need to share that with you, and I think the attorney has said it would be best to do that attorney to attorney. If you want our attorney to talk to you directly, we can do that too. But I'll admit that a lot of the details in it are things that, I'm not an attorney, so I don't know all the specifics there. But what's most important from this standpoint, from our standpoint, is to work with you and to make it work. Whether if you are still interested in easement, we're still interested in making an easement work.
Well,
if it's
okay.
A different format, we're interested in working with you on what that format may be. We are open to even talking about what the financial arrangements are, if that needs to be changed. I think we want to work with you.
All right. One of the things that we've been asking is that we have a draft from you. And so my comment is, we don't know where you are. You've reviewed our comments, but now you want to have an attorney-to-attorney conversation where we're not even participating in that conversation, we're involved in it. It's kind of crazy. What I'm recommending is that you indicate that you have an earnest interest in negotiating. We can then forward that on to the drinking water people. And that you provide a draft which incorporates what you're willing to accept from our comments and what you're not. So we can obviously understand where you are. And then I think the attorneys can talk to each other to the from here to eternity, as far as I'm concerned. But I think we're participants in this situation, not the attorney. So we have to understand the terms, and I think that's appropriate and that's reasonable. Now, whether or not your attorney wants to keep it a deep, dark secret to us and only deal with the intelligent people, the lawyers, is another thing. But you can tell I'm peeved because I was furious when I read the drinking water statement that the negotiations have broken down. I was beside myself. And I consider that if that was a true statement that you made, it's a lie. It is an absolute lie, and I think that's really what set me off. And I think it was legitimate position on my part because I'm reading the clear letters of what's in the email that woman sent. So there you are.
The actual statement we made to the Drinking Water Groundwater Trust Fund Advisory Commission is that after a year of negotiations, we've been unable to come to agreement on the terms of the language, which is a true statement. But the problem is, and the reason we're trying to shift to the way the property is protected through the drinking water, groundwater from easement, it was both easement and warranty deed with grant agreements attached. We're trying to just eliminate the easement part for now because we're up against time deadlines. Once we submit and sign this grant agreement, if it's tied to the easement and we still can't come to agreement in the next 120 days, the clock will start ticking on another 120 days to resolve the issue then.
Well, can I ask a question, Ralph?
Sure.
Go ahead.
So, if you're telling them that it doesn't have the easement to get them through, to get their funding from them, are they gonna pull funding because you then do an easement later on? Is there a stipulation in there that says there is no easement attached to this? Because the way this is worded, and I quote, "The purchase of the property will not include a conservation easement." That is
if I
from
can,
you, Eric.
Yes, from me. Our understanding from the drinking water, groundwater, is that they needed to have an official, is there an easement or isn't there an easement? And they need that by May 5th, which is next week. So we asked, is it okay to put in there that we may have an easement at that time? And they said, no, we need to know if there is or isn't. It doesn't mean that we can't continue to negotiate that there is.
It just seems like you're playing the middle on both sides of trying to tell them what they want to hear to get their money, tell us what we want to hear to get our money.
All right.
Well, I think if I can say, if there was, whatever was communicated to you, that didn't come from us saying, we did share, as Linda has said, that we don't have an agreement at this time. They have said, they need communities, they need to have acknowledgement of community support. If you say no, which is entirely, obviously you're right, they may pull their funding, or they will pull their funding, is what they've said. And that's understandable.
In a prior communication to you, we said that we would make an effort because we were operating on the fact that there was a 90-day due diligence process, and that it was So the clock was set for July, basically, that we had to complete our negotiations by July. We're still willing to do that. And I think if you communicate with the donors that we're negotiating in earnest, that we have, that you're submitting a draft by such and such a date, which should be sufficient time for us to negotiate the terms and come up with an agreement, a finalized agreement. I think that is, we've always been operating under that assumption. Not that it's going to take 120 days and then there's another 120 days and all this other stuff. So, and the other thing is that you haven't provided us with anything. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. We have gone through and sent you the draft, the markup. We've spent time on it. There's a cover letter to the draft indicating the issue, the principal issues. There's 5 of them or something like that. That just says, for your reference, these are key issues. So we've told you everything that we have on our mind. You have told us nothing.
If I could tell you a couple of things. We obviously are usually in the position of doing easements. We're not the landowner, so our roles are reversed here. So what we're coming from a point of view is some of the terms that you did put in there are kind of unique and not something that we would ever put on our easements with a landowner, because it's you've done some things by probably not having that advice that is you're reluctant to seek out, legal or whatever. So there are some unique things in there that really don't work. So, and
All
it
right.
shows.
Well, you've been silent to that.
Well,
you haven't opened up
we
anything.
asked you about doing this in workshops, and you said, no, we want to do it ourselves.
Well, you've
So
got, we
that
could
was
have
the
a
first
workshop,
step
we could
of
have a negotiation, but you've
miscommunications.
opted out of it.
I'm saying it's human miscommunication is what we're experiencing. So we were proposing that we get together in a workshop format so that we could focus on this, both parties. And
Well, why don't we move
So-
the process along with you providing a draft that indicates what positions you have accepted? I don't care whether ours is unique or not, but you don't accept it. And then we have a negotiation around those terms and conditions. We then involve the attorney at the same time, as long as we have something we can work with. Right at the present time, we have zero. We have nothing we can work with.
I will say, we are happy to put forward our response in terms of, and we will get that to you as soon as possible.
Okay.
Our attorney is looking at that. I can say that we had not anticipated the drinking water deadlines. That was not something that we expected. We only learned about that last week, I think it was.
Well, no, really 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago?
We've been trying to figure out a way to comply with this grant agreement.
So this is also partial a problem that I brought up at the beginning of this project of wanting to discuss a year and a half ago of what direction we were going, of what was going to be accepted, of how the usage was going to be. So then you guys knew who to seek out for grants. So then it would correspond with what we're looking for and trying to do. But now we're kick the can down the road to the point where you guys have all these grant funders that have their restrictions, and it may not line up with what we're looking for, or what we can agree on, not necessarily exactly what we're looking for, but what we can agree on. So now, it's like we're getting pushed back into a wall on it as well.
What we're actually asking for is to set the easement aside, and I know I read the letter and said, why did we put it all the way off to November 14th? We don't have to, we can continue negotiations now. But we're trying to comply with the Drinking Water Groundwater Trust Fund, and we're trying to tie it now to the warranty deed so we have more time to work out the easement negotiations later. But you're right, all of these grants come with their own, well, this grant agreement was supposed to be presented to us in January. We just got it a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
And that was, oh my gosh, the whole thing is tied to the easement that we haven't negotiated yet, and they need this, like, now.
I think that's what we were always waiting for, was the language that was attached to the grantor's requirements in order for money to come through, and not having that language to work with. We did the best we could, but we're waiting to get that language to see how it would incorporate into the easement that we were working on.
Our attorney is looking for that too, and the L-chip people finally came up with their minimum deed terms about 2 weeks ago. Maybe there's not a sense of urgency on their part, but we have a closing date looming large on November 14th, 2025, when our purchase and sales agreement expires with these landowners. And I can sense your frustration and annoyance with us, and I'm very sorry that it's come to this. This is one of the best projects the Upper Saco Valley Land Trust has ever done. And we're really proud to be involved in this. I've had a chance to walk on the property. It's just plain spectacular with all the wildlife and the water resources and the eskers.
It certainly is. We agree with that.
It's just spectacular.
I'm just really concerned that, and it's not personal, and I know everybody's, you're catching hand grenades from everybody, I get that. But I'm just concerned if the easement gets set aside so that whatever can be finalized, everything, I understand it. I'm just concerned that negotiation on a conservation easement might be fruitless because the handcuffs will be on and there will be no room for really negotiation. You got an avenue this wide that you can fit that conservation easement in, and that's it. There's not really any room to negotiate anything based on the sacrosanct terms from all these funders that have to be adhered to, or else the whole project falls apart. That's the only thing that concerns me, is that we may not have any position to bargain from.
Thank you, Mike.
Well,
That's
and
kind of the room I'm trying to go to.
I mean, these terms are pretty, that they usually put in, the ones that we've experienced before, don't disagree with our usual easement language by any means, so they're not something extreme. I guess the one thing that maybe somebody doesn't like is the fact that, you know, ATVs are not a great fit, you know, around all of the ponds, and that's the only thing that we've really heard, you know, can't be in there anymore, and that's been quite a playground in there. So other than that, we're
Right, and that's not a big sticking point for me personally.
so, but,
That's not what I didn't have anything specific in mind. I'm concerned on a global sense that if the project is finalized and then we're trying to negotiate an easement that fits, we just might not, it might be like a waste of time. We're gonna be stuck accepting things we don't want to accept just to get it done.
But I don't think that would have been negotiable anyway. It sounds like those terms are the terms, and that they're not
Well,
negotiable.
right, but when we've got $200,000+ of taxpayer dollars on the table, that may be a position, well, it's that or nothing, then it's nothing. You walk away, we just don't just roll over, hand over the checkbook.
We're responsible to explain that to.
We've got to negotiate the best interest of the town of Madison.
Right.
And it's not personal to me or anybody else, it's the town.
The draft easement that we got, I think what we mostly all agreed upon and objected to is the commercial aspects of that easement. In my heart, I don't believe that Upper Saco Valley wants those commercial aspects of an easement either. And I don't think that anyone giving grant money would want to see a commercial aspect. So if we could have eliminated all those inferences to commercialization of the easement, we would be in a much different position now and feeling very differently about it. And I just think it's unfortunate because I don't believe for 1 minute you want to see a commercial aspects on the property and we don't. And I think that was the biggest sticking point down the road.
There's a whole bunch of things, but
If I could just comment, I think there's a lot more things within the easement that we agree on that we
Right.
don't. In terms of how the property would be used and protected and the resources protected.
And I'm with you 100%, and try to soften. Ralph was pretty fired up.
I know.
He was worse. Good thing you didn't talk to him yesterday. But how quickly could we get some kind of response back to the comments that we have made in a draft to give us some understanding of how you feel about what we have sent to you? Because since we sent that over, to my knowledge, we don't have any response. So, I mean, we literally spent 2 afternoons going through page by page, and Kate documented all the changes and submitted it, and we haven't seen anything back. How?
The reason you haven't seen anything back is because our attorney would prefer to work with your attorney. I know.
Well, I
If that's his, that's his preference, it's
sorry,
not
that's not
working
gonna
for you,
work.
obviously.
Well, no,
That's-
but I understand, and just to let you know personally what my position is as a taxpayer and a representative of the people, we're trying to minimize the amount of dollars we have to pay to our lawyer. You guys need them for everything that you do, and so do we, but we need them to cover our back, not, I just don't want to turn it over and have, hey guys, go ahead and have an open conversation, because we've got up to $5,000 and that's it. And I'd just soon not spend that much if we can avoid it. So if somehow, I mean, if your attorney could just, and he doesn't have to divulge anything he's saying, he can let you know, hey, we don't really like this, and just give us an indication, we don't like that, or what, just something.
I can have that by Monday because I've provided that to him and he's provided his comments back to us.
That'd be great. If you can get us something that doesn't divulge any of his, representation or whatever, that's fine with me. Just so we can know where you stand, or your side stands with respect to the comments that we've sent. At least,
And as far as the funding goes, we've had a conversation amongst each other, and if the amount of money that you want to contribute to this project, we can negotiate that. You can save some money out for legal costs. And when,
well, I appreciate that, but we can't.
oh, you can't.
The way that these funds are, it doesn't work that way.
Oh.
The fund that we're talking about, this money would come out of, is for specifically acquisition of land or interest in land. It can't be used for we had to appropriate the legal funds from another source.
And we would be open to negotiating, because we respect, we're all taxpayers too. We understand that. I would say, the thing that we need is, to know, are you behind the project? And if you say, like you were saying before, Ralph, which I really respect, if you say you're going to the funders, if you're going to drinking water, I can say this project will disappear. And I don't want to see that.
But
But I will say, we can definitely get you our comments. I know that we still have a lot of negotiating ahead of us to get there. and
Well, we
would
haven't
see
set a
that in good
timetable.
faith.
Well,
Why don't we set a timetable? Why don't you get your comments to us, or draft, or whatever you could send us. We'll have an opportunity, we'll set up a special time period for us to review that. We'll engage our attorney, and then we'll set a timetable or a date for us to open negotiations.
When we
I think that's a step forward versus you having an attorney-to-attorney conversation where the principals are not involved. In other words, you want the attorneys to make decisions concerning, call them commercial decisions.
we can certainly do that. We are, I think, under a very tight timetable in order to get back to, you could tell me what the time frame is. Do you know, Linda?
The clock won't start ticking on the 120-day review period until we
I thought it was
submit it.
90.
Well, that was 90 for other stuff. This is the grant agreement with the groundwater trust fund people. Until we submit that. If we submit it tied to the easement, we have to come to agreement on an easement within the 120-day period, or then we have to start from scratch again if we still can't come to agreement.
Well, we'll make an effort. You guys have to cooperate. That's all we can do.
I personally was most offended by this person from DES who says, "A response by the end of tomorrow, Tuesday, April 29th, would be greatly appreciated." Now, this is a person that works for the state government that doesn't apparently realize in a correspondence to a municipal committee that no decision can be made outside of a meeting.
I did let him
And,
know that.
and I know that's not
not
you,
us.
that was the most offensive part to this whole conversation to me, is somebody that works in state government that doesn't know how state government works. You can't just, no one individual of us could respond to that email and give any kind of answer without meeting at this table and making a decision. And I'm sorry to.
I totally respect that. Totally understand that, and agree.
I just think that it's just, give me a break.
Okay, why don't you tell us what the next steps are?
She's gonna get us a draft by
Hold
Monday.
on, let them talk, indicate, because I wanted in the minutes that Linda indicated these were the next steps.
Yes, I can get that to you right now, with all of our comments and concerns.
Okay. All right, so you're gonna, all right, you get it to us by Monday, a letter indicating what the next steps are.
It's gonna be a draft.
Yes.
Whatever she's sending us.
Draft number.
Okay.
3, 4, yeah.
So are we going to be taking the warranty deed with attached grant agreements off the table for moving forward? Are we gonna keep trying to move forward with drinking water with the easement in place?
I don't know. All I can tell you is that we will approach the negotiations in earnest. And we will attempt to meet whatever timetable is necessary. We indicated July because it was the 90-day phase from November. However, if it happens to be June, so be it. We'll attempt to deal with you and conclude an agreement in place by June if necessary.
So to answer Eric's question, yes, we can go ahead with this all tied to the easement like the Drinking Water Groundwater Trust Fund has proposed, and hope that we all can come to agreement.
All right?
I feel we ought to be able to. Yes.
I think we're
Yeah.
close on lots of things.
When I read the letter from the state, it seemed like there was not going to be a conservation easement at the closing. And it's my understanding that we can't give you the money for free, that we need something.
No.
We know we'd be
We
foregoing.
wouldn't close with your money if
We
that were the
would
case.
be foregoing your money if
Yeah.
we can't come to agreement.
We'd only get your
We're
money
accepting
if we
that.
have an acceptable easement in place. So
Right.
yeah. So that's fair.
Yeah.
And when is the groundwater,
We're-
May 12th, right?
Yeah, but that won't
They want
happen.
it back this.
That won't happen now because we're going to go forward with the project as it was outlined in the grant application. But what the Drinking Water Groundwater Trust Fund Advisory Committee needs to know is that this town of Madison still supports this project.
Okay.
And
Well-
I agree with you, I think we are much closer together on this than we are apart, because
Then we'll delete the sentence where we say we have no assurance that we will negotiate. So we'll modify the letter to them, the email to them, which goes out tomorrow.
and we're not going
Thank you.
to contact any other of the grantors about our
Well, we'll
concerns.
hold off until Monday.
I look forward to seeing how far apart or how close we really
Yeah.
are. and seeing
Let's
that before I
let
make a
them
decision
submit
on anything.
their
Right, but
plan.
we don't want to jeopardize anything by doing something prematurely.
I'm also
I
not gonna make a
suggest that we
decision.
don't do anything until we receive something from them. Okay, so we're not gonna send anything out to the other donors, which is what I had in the letter. We'll hold off on that until we can understand where you are. Okay?
I said something wrong.
Mr. Bergeron?
Mr. Chairman, I will express personally, from the perspective of my business, that being Bergeron Technical Services, some concern here. I'm a little bit concerned and frustrated that it seems like the wheels are falling off this thing. That's never a good situation. The most important thing always in business is good communications. Clearly it hasn't happened. But, you know, I'm looking at, somebody has made a suggestion to have attorney-to-attorney conversations before the boards get involved. From doing this kind of work for 30 years, I can tell you that would probably be better than not. You don't want to do it, but that's my experience. Let the attorneys nail down the big pieces, pick off the low-hanging fruit, so that you don't have to keep going back and forth. At some point in time, you're going to have to get the attorneys involved. You do with that what you want. As far as a letter from the state of New Hampshire or an email from the state of New Hampshire, particularly Department of Environmental Services and or NHDOT that doesn't make any sense, take that as standard operating procedure, okay? From a business perspective, my concern is that as of a few minutes ago, I have somebody in my office finalizing some plans that get submitted for a date in a couple of weeks so that they make their way to the Madison Planning Board for a conceptual review. After that conceptual review, our plan is to go for the final review, which would be in July, and we were all going to be right under the wire in terms of that 120-day review period. That was the understanding that I had. And frankly, I'm going to say it's right, I don't want Bergeron Technical Services to become collateral damage because two parties can't get along. So figure it out.
Okay, thank you. All right,
Should we give you an update on everything else that's going on with the project? Because
Sure.
it's all pretty good, except for this bump in the road. My heart sank when I saw this whole thing transpiring. But the surveys are well underway. Both the HEB survey, we've spent $160-something thousand on that, and the Bergeron Technical Services it was part of the negotiations to satisfy the need of the sellers, the landowners, to realize a certain amount of money from the project. So one of the pieces is being subdivided and lots created, and we get the portion that gives us access to the property. So that's good. That's excellent news. That'll be done in July, or hopes to be done in July, because the appraiser can't start his work until the survey's done. Other than that, I've been out on the property several times working on the baseline documentation for the property, and I've come to know it really well, and there's lots of awesome things out there, but then what else? All of our other funders are on board still. I've checked with everybody. They're good to go with an easement or without an easement. They're good to go either way. So I sincerely hope that we can all come together and work on this and come to a resolution that is satisfactory to all parties sooner rather than later.
very good. Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you. And I'll just say, we're very excited about this opportunity and look forward to working with you on
Okay.
making it possible.
Well, this is a bump in the road, let's get past it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. And thank you all for time for putting this in.
Thank you.
Can't go without a hat. I'm gonna freeze
Oh,
to
man,
death.
oh, I left it colder. One, but-
So it was out of movement, it got cold, so.
Did you have the state's letter
What's that?
from the state?
Okay, moving on, the next item on the agenda, we covered that. Property review commenced.
You passed. You did yours.
I
You did.
I completed the two that were missing.
Yep.
And so the next step is just to review what has been updated. And I'll volunteer to do that, to make sure that all of the comments that others have made have been inputted into the property descriptions. So that's the next step. The issue on the two that were late in getting done is that they weren't in the book. They were easements, not properties that we own. The easements represent roughly just about half of all, there's like 1,100 acres. And the McNair easements represent 560 or whatever, 600 and something. So there's two of them, so it's like 630. So it's more than half of our properties that we manage, I'll call it management, conservation management, are these two particular easements, and they're not in the book. So Kate is going to update, and then I will review to ensure that we've got all of the comments that have been made by Tim on all the modifications to the property descriptions are done. That puts us in a position where we can now move forward on digitizing the records.
The other thing I thought we had to do was to look at the abutters now, because they've changed the abutters to the property, because it's a place where it lists abutters to the
Well,
town
let's,
property.
when I review it, I'll that's a good comment, because Tim mentions the abutters in the last two that I've seen. So the abutters list on at least two of them have been modified. So I'm happy with the fact that, and some of the modifications that from the reports that Tim has come out really reflect a substantial amount of work in terms of what's happened. Some of the records go back to 2006. And this is the one with McNair easement, is that it only represented one segment of the two properties. And it was interesting in terms of what was described in 2006 versus the current state of affairs. So that one description that Tim did required a substantial amount of modification as a result of current information. So I'm encouraged that we've made progress, and hopefully that in the near term we're going to be ready to work on digitizing the files, which we don't have funding for this year at any rate. But again, it's one of those things, if we conclude the chain of ponds, that would be a major modification. So chain of ponds represents a substantial addition. It's like 1/3 of the property under conservation management. It's a 1/3 addition to where we are. And a significant one. It's probably a high quality one that represents a significant move for us in terms of the properties we have under our management. So with that, you suffered through.
It was nice to get an
At least
update.
you didn't fall asleep. You didn't fall asleep.
No.
And I was mean and nasty. And sometimes I get that way, but,
Seems understandable.
well, it was frustrating. It's a frustration issue.
Yeah.
Okay, so, I will,
Started it.
okay, so
But you can
you have the
explain
floor.
Great. So thank you for inviting us to come. I know many of you, but for those who I don't know, I'm Jill Emerson. I'm the staff scientist at Green Mountain Conservation Group. And today I have with me two of our seasonal employees, formerly our AmeriCorps members. So we have Emma Revenaugh and Mackenzie Sarine. And so today we're going to talk about the water quality from the testing that we did throughout the town in 2024. And then we're going to spend a couple minutes talking about the proposed education programs for the Madison Rep program with Heather. Heather, these are our seasonal employees.
I think I remember them, yeah.
So Emma and Mackenzie, that's Heather, that's the head of the Madison Rec Department.
Nice to meet you.
So with that, one of the other things that I regret to inform the committee is that we recently lost our AmeriCorps funding as part of the DOGE $400 million executive order that went out last Friday. So as of right now, the Lakes Region Conservation Corps has been dissolved, and we're hopeful that with some upcoming lawsuit that's happened, 25 states throughout America have joined a lawsuit to try to restore AmeriCorps funding, since that is appointed by the Congress. So I don't know how that will shake out, but as of right now, Green Mountain is evaluating its programs in light of this deeply upsetting news, because we have lost half of our workforce that we have for summer programming here. So we're continuing to negotiate it through, and I will let Madison know if there's any major changes to expect in the town in light of this. But we are watching it unfold slowly here at the last couple of days, and it will continue to unfold, I'm sure, in the coming weeks. So anyway, with that, Emma here is going to walk you through the water quality report that we did send to the town, and it does, I see copies because it's bright green, so it's very easy to identify.
Yes, does anyone not have a copy or wants one?
So the water quality data here is part of the Rivers program. We just launched our 23rd season this week, actually. So monitoring in your town happens on Mondays and Fridays, with myself being one of the volunteers and a volunteer from Eaton covering the rest of Madison. So we're hopeful we can continue the program in full through October.
So as Jill mentioned, this is part of the Rivers program. Rivers is a collaboration between Green Mountain as well as the Saco River Corridor Commission that does a whole host of surface water monitoring in the Saco River watershed. So Green Mountain currently samples 28 sites, and it's massively aided by volunteers. So me, Jill, Mackenzie, we're only a very small fraction of the people who are out there doing this work. So first I'll kind of just go over what exactly it is that we're looking for and measuring. I realize many of you have probably been through a million of these spiels, so I apologize if it seems like I'm telling you things you already know. But at each site we sample a list of parameters. Temperature, pretty obvious one. This is also one that we don't have any, has specific values that we need to reach. So, but we do monitor for major changes. There's also pH, so how acidic or alkaline the water is. In New Hampshire, that sweet spot is around 6.5, so a little acidic. We also measure for turbidity, so the amount of sediment that's suspended in the water. This affects water clarity, and the biggest impacts we see with that are just organisms and aquatic biological health. Our streams in New Hampshire are very nice and clear and clean, but when they get really cloudy and dirty, we start to see some biological impacts. Let's measure dissolved oxygen, so the amount of oxygen that's in the water. Again, the reason why we look for this is mostly to check for any biological impacts. So organisms need oxygen, poorly oxygenated streams represent a concern for us. Let's look at phosphorus, total phosphorus. This is what helps algae grow, and high levels of phosphorus we will often use to look at elevated levels of decomposition. So that includes sewage is a big one that we look for. Did you have a question?
Just a quick one. I'm not a scientific person whatsoever. Can you just go back to the dissolved oxygen and, as best you can, explain to me how you can get to 120%?
That is a great question. So essentially there is, so 100% is what you would think would be the maximum, but dissolved oxygen is really heavily influenced by temperature. So when water is really, really cold, it essentially behaves in a slightly different way. Those bonds expand the same way that like an ice cube is bigger than what that volume of water would be if it was melted. Those bonds expand and essentially allow it to integrate more oxygen. So we see it essentially pass that 100% threshold. It's a little confusing even to me, and I am a scientist.
You did your best.
Cold water holds more oxygen. That's
But I guess,
like the tagline.
is it a percentage of volume or?
It's essentially the percentage of oxygen molecules that are in there, and so cold water actually condenses a little bit more before it expands when it's frozen. And so in that, like, condensing, it can actually just hold more oxygen in place in a smaller area.
I apologize.
You ask this every year.
Don't apologize.
And I still, it's not acceptable. I just don't understand. We're talking about a concentration, and how can we have more than 100%?
It's not a percentage of volume. Right, it's not a percent of the water, it's a percent of gases total.
I know, but it's greater than 100%. It confuses the hell out of me. I'm sorry, we gotta move on.
Oh my goodness, no.
Not gonna solve my
Necessary.
confusion.
And then the last parameter that we sample is conductivity, so the ability of water to pass an electrical charge. And when we look at conductivity, what we're often are looking for is how salty water is. So the saltier body of water is, the higher the conductivity. So it's something we use to interpret the influence of road salts in our bodies of water. And like I said, all of these parameters, with the exception of temperature, have standards. So either set by DES or the EPA. And so if we see values falling above or below those parameters, those are things that we're looking for. And it's what I'm going to highlight as I'm going through each site. Perhaps a spoiler alert, but the water quality in Madison and within the entire watershed is pretty great. So we're really not picking up on any trends or instances of things that are acutely concerning to us. So first we'll talk about GM1, which is Banfield Brook. This crosses under 113 right around the Edelweiss Village, as well as by the FW Webb Company, if anyone knows where that is. And this is the only site in Madison that we sample all year round, so January through December. So again, to keep things short, I'm just going to touch upon any trends that we saw where things were falling out of range, or anything that we potentially want to look out for. At Banfield Brook, we saw that total phosphorus, while completely in range, was part of an increasing trend since around 2020, so those values are getting higher. Turbidity was similar. We saw that turbidity had the highest median value since 2020. But again, I really want to highlight that neither of these values are even nearing the limit where we would have any concern. It's just something that we'll be looking for as we hopefully continue to sample the site for years to come. Another thing that I want to point out is that conductivity values in 2024 were pretty similar to what we've seen in past years, but these values are pretty high, and we saw that the standard for conductivity was exceeded from May through December.
Comment on pH. 7 is neutral, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, 7 is neutral.
Why is it essentially basic at this point?
Yeah, so I can try and respond to that question. One of the things that we've been dealing with in our lab is evaluating the possibility that there might have been an equipment error. So why those values are higher is not because they actually are, but because we've been dealing with those equipment issues.
So despite the pH probe passing QA/QC, it got to a point where we just didn't trust it, even though we couldn't identify anything. So we're basically threw it out, got a new one, and we have noticed that the water quality pH values are back to 6.8. So even though they crept up to 7 with the older probe, despite our best efforts to quality control check that, it seems like it still had some malfunction we couldn't pinpoint. So it's, yeah.
Well, the unfortunate thing with conductivity is road salt.
Yeah.
And 113 is heavily salted. Mm-hmm. And the drainage at that particular location, everything from the road feeds down into that brook. So too.
Yeah, but you're also getting whatever's in the Peach Porch pond system,
Right.
coming out of there too.
Right.
Another thing with Banfield Brook, I just want to quick explain some of what this page looks like where we discussed dissolved oxygen. As we mentioned earlier, oxygen is really heavily dependent on temperature. So we look to see if those relationships between temperature and oxygen are strong. And that is definitely the case at this site. And there were no instances in 2024 of dissolved oxygen being at subpar levels. So it was all really well oxygenated and what we like to see. So I just wanted to, this is arguably the most complicated page. So I wanted to make sure everyone was aware. Banfield Brook is also the only site in Madison where we look at a handful of other parameters on this sheet. So these are, for lack of a better phrase, nicher chemical compounds that we look at to kind of fine-tune some additional things. And so these highlighted yellow bars represent when these standards have exceeded pristine surface water concentrations. So when it's no longer pristine, doesn't necessarily mean bad, just means it's not, perfect. So we saw that for almost every month sampled, nitrate was above that level, and for every month sampled, chloride was above that level. Nitrate, we see most commonly associated with human impacts. So fertilizers is a big one, human waste is a big one, and then also just runoff from industrial sites. Chloride is also really heavily associated with road salts. So the compound for both road salt and table salt, what we put on our food, is sodium chloride. And then another one to note is orthophosphate. This exceeded for 3 months out of when we sampled. And our value for October was above the level that the EPA has set for essentially something detecting concern. Me and Jill are currently going through the process of verifying this, so we want to make sure that this isn't just a random equipment error. And even despite the fact that it is exceeding this kind of secondary limit that we have, that doesn't by definition mean that that's a bad thing. It would be more concerning if we were seeing this happen every single year or for multiple months at a time. But the fact that it is exceeding just once is not of particular concern. I'll address that a little bit at the end of what that could mean. But orthophosphate is essentially another way of looking at organic compounds in the water. So that's organic waste, that's also sewage.
We've asked UNH to rerun it, and since they do it for us for free, we get it when we get it.
Yeah. So we'll make sure to give you a definitive answer on that when we have that back. Next up, we have GM3, or Forest Brook. This is another stream that crosses 113 right next to the fire department and the post office.
Like Silver Lake Harbor.
Right.
Yes. And we just sampled this. Phosphorus, turbidity, those all looked great. Again, we did see an issue with conductivity. The standard was exceeded only in 1 month, and that was during September. This is likely, obviously, the salt from the roads is entering in the winter and the spring when we're putting it on the roads frequently. And it's getting dissolved into that water, but the water is often at really high volumes. But in the summer, in September, when we're not getting as much precipitation, there's no snow to melt anymore, those water levels get lower, and that's when we see that concentration of salt rise. Because that isn't something that's getting processed throughout the biological system. The salt that exists in the river in, January, that same amount is still going to exist in September. And then at Forest Brook, oxygen also looked great. Next up, we have Farron Brook. This crosses Eaton Road in the Purity Springs, King Pine area. I'm sure you guys are all very familiar. And this is another one where we sample May through October. Two kind of positive things that I just want to call out is that both total phosphorus and turbidity had low values compared to the last 5 or 6 years. So even though we weren't seeing major exceedances in those parameters in past years, phosphorus is getting lower and turbidity is getting lower, which is just great news. especially considering this is a site that is really close to / runs directly under the road. Conductivity at the site was lower than cumulative values from the past 5 years. With that being said, the standard was exceeded again in the month of September. And then oxygen also looked great at this site. And please interrupt me if you have any questions. Last, we have GM5 or Millbrook. This is another site, or this is another brook that crosses under Eaton Road, again in the Purity Springs, King Pine area. And a very positive thing to note is that conductivity in 2024 was lower than all of the combined values from the previous 5 years. So we saw an improvement in conductivity at that site. One thing to note here is, as I mentioned previously, we expect that oxygen, dissolved oxygen, and temperature are going to have a strong relationship. But at this site, we noted that both in 2024 and in previous years, that relationship was not as strong as we'd expect it to be. And there's a lot of things that can cause this. One of the main things that we look for is total phosphorus. But phosphorus was within healthy limits at that site. So another thing that could possibly be extremely influencing that relationship is disruption of flow. So impoundments, things getting moved in. It could also result from changes in the vegetation around that site. But despite that, dissolved oxygen at Millbrook was still within really healthy levels. We just know that something is externally influencing how much is in the stream.
Didn't they do a lot of dam work in 2024 on that dam behind the mill? With that
It's that, yeah, that's definitely a possibility.
They had a project in the last couple of years where they did some repairs.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So they would have changed, I don't know exactly what they would have done, but that would have been a man-made intervention.
And that was something Purity Springs did?
Yeah, in conjunction with the Dam Bureau at the
Okay.
state.
Yeah, are you aware of any monitoring that happens on Purity Pond? Yeah, I've not found any, and I just didn't know if it was data that existed in a black box somewhere. But okay, yeah, I was just wondering.
Okay. So to just kind of tie things all together, pH was higher in 2024 than it had been in the previous 5 years, but we're pretty positive that this is an equipment issue. And even if it weren't, it's not even nearing the level of concern, so it's just an interesting trend. We saw that the conductivity standard was exceeded at 3 out of the 4 sites for 8 months at GM1, and then in the month of September for GM3 and 4. At GM1, the site where we do some additional monitoring, some additional chemical parameters, we saw that orthophosphate did exceed those pristine surface water standards, as well as the secondary standard that the EPA has set. It's possible that that is not an accurate data point, which we will let you know when we find that out. But if it is, what this might mean is that in October, there's essentially an excess of nutrients being loaded into Banfield Brook. And then lastly, both chloride and nitrate routinely exceeded pristine water quality standards at that site. These are not values that pose any threats to human or ecological health, but what it does indicate to us is that there are external inputs of salt and fertilizers or other organic compounds entering the stream. And that is all I have for you guys, so any questions?
Well, how do you decide which, how to get decided which brooks that you test?
I'm gonna turn this over to Jill.
Yeah, so when the program was first developed in the early aughts, we worked with wetland and river scientists out of UNH to help us identify areas that were going to be like the best bang for your buck, essentially. So Some of them were chosen because of groundwater concerns, so some of our sites are near development areas or places that just have a lot of development. So the P Porch Pond system, Banfield Brook has a lot of development in that general area and also has 113 right next to it. Some places were targeted as like areas that might be developed at some point because there was land that was available, again, back in the early aughts. And so some sites were picked up for let's monitor to see if development does happen, what impact that does have. But this was long before I joined the organization. So I do know that Green Mountain worked with a bunch of different UNH scientists to try to evaluate the best sites to do this monitoring at.
And I think they came to the Conservation Commission and discussed different sites with us.
Yeah.
And then we chose, I think initially we had 3 and then we expanded to 5 sites.
Yeah, and so sites sometimes get picked up and dropped for a variety of
Yeah.
reasons. Sometimes we get access revoked by landowners, sometimes it's conditions that just become unsafe at the location, sometimes it's just we can't get accurate data, so there's a variety of reasons to pick up and drop things. But by and large, the core group of sites has been about 15 to 18 that we monitored since the early aughts, and then we had another influx in like 2013 for another big group of sites onboarding.
And then I had a question about road salt, excuse me. I mean, it gets into the water and it flows downstream, but it never goes away.
No, yeah, so unlike things like phosphorus or nitrogen, which animals and plants can utilize, they can't really do that with salt. So it's not getting processed or stored anywhere, it's just, yeah, it's staying there.
So where it can seep deeper into the aquifer, it does, but where it can't, I'm just wondering, are there, say, pools along a stream where somehow the current has the salt collect and drop down in, so that there are places in a stream that are more heavily, I didn't know if that happened, but, I mean, eventually, all the water is, I know that there was a study done around Concord that they were having trouble, a lot of people were having high blood pressure because enough salt had seeped down deep enough into the aquifer that it was coming into people's wells, and that they were having physical problems because they were ingesting too much sodium in the drinking water. And I haven't heard about any work done that's to mitigate that or to slow it down. I mean, everyone talks about road salt, but nobody seems to have a solution for the.
So I think the city of Concord, don't quote me on this,
Someone
but I
mentioned.
think they switched to brining now on at least like 93. And we're trying to utilize some of that, because the brining is still salting, it's not the absence of salt, but the benefit of brining, or one of the benefits of brining, is that it typically takes only about a quarter of the salt to do the same amount as going and throwing the road salt on top of it. And so, you do have to keep the roads open and the roads safe, but it's a little more environmentally friendly to switch to brining. And so I think they were doing that, or that was, I don't know like how far in the process they are, if they're currently doing that, but I know that is what they were discussing. But we've done some small groundwater surveys around here through just people who are willing to participate in the program, and we are seeing that some of their drinking water is being impacted from road salting. And when we do our Get Wet program, which is the kids bring in a sample of their drinking water if they choose to, we can pretty much identify quickly who lives on a major road, because their drinking water will be saltier than somebody who lives in a more rural, off of a major road.
Thank you. And my only other request is that when the letter comes in, the annual letter comes in from Green Mountain, I think it comes with the request for the donation from conservation, but in past, you've always put down what the actual, how many dollars were spent and how many dollars were saved because of the program. And I may be wrong, I don't think it was in this year's letter, and I know when we, before it gone to the town, that was helpful in getting them to agree. Now that the amount that we donate is in the budget, it's less discussed at town meeting, but it's just nice to have that backup to say, okay, we've given you $1,650 for $8,000 worth of actual expense.
So I did include that. I'm sorry if it did not get to you, but that is a standard for
It may have it, but
Okay.
I just want to be sure that.
I can email it to you directly if you'd like a copy. Okay.
But, just
Yes.
in the future.
Yeah,
it
so
would
that
be-
that is always included, so
Wonderful.
apologies if you didn't receive it.
That-
But yes, we do always like to outline exactly how much we are expending in everybody's town and then asking for a small portion of it so that they can see exactly what your donation or your contribution is leveraging.
Okay, thank you. Well, once it moved into our budget, it was far less controversial. So, but I just think it's always good to have the proof there.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
So do we want to talk about the rec program?
The rec program is next.
So that we can let Heather go?
Okay.
Yes.
Who's been waiting so patiently?
She doesn't leave until you leave.
Oh, okay, sorry. Sorry.
No way. Yeah, our kids had their programs last summer. They loved them, and I was hoping to do it again this year. The only issue that we've come into recently is transportation has become an issue for some of our days of the week for summer camp. So the original schedule that we had talked about needs to be tweaked. Not too bad, but again, just needs to be tweaked. We are looking for 1 day a week to have programs. I believe the programs are an hour.
Yeah, hour to an hour and a half. If the kids are having a good time and it goes over, that's fine. That's fine by me.
They were very flexible with all of it. It was amazing. So anyway, we were hoping originally we were Tuesdays, and now we're looking at every other Tuesday, Wednesday. During the 8 weeks of summer camp. Well, no, during the month of July. That's what we decided on. The month of July.
So we've decided on 5
weeks.
5 1-hour-ish programs. Like I said, if they end up
Yes.
being an hour and a half, that's fine. We are working with Madison Rec to get Hammer out of schedule. Tara Schroeder has been, our education person has been working with Heather, who's just wasn't available today.
Yeah.
But we are still committed, even in light of the recent Doge funding fiasco. We're still committed to doing this program. We are currently working out what this will look like for the summer. And so the best I can offer you is we're going to try our darndest to make this work, but we will be in communication as we can better evaluate the impact that this unexpected news will now have.
And we are very flexible with whatever you give us. We will work around your schedule too.
Okay.
Is my point on those days. Yeah.
Roughly, how many kids do you expect it will accommodate?
I have 20 signed up right now, every week for 8 weeks. Yep. Our max is 40 because we'll have 4 counselors, 10 for each counselor. Yeah.
So right now, we were also planned for about 20-ish kids. If it ends up being slightly more or less than that, that's
Yeah.
fine. But should you, for some reason, get to 40, will you please let us know?
Yes.
Okay.
And we can, again, alternate. We will work with whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
Since this is being funded by the Conservation Commission, I don't know if there's input in terms of what type of programming. We try to do science-based programming. Since we don't have to follow next generation science standards, we try to be a little looser and a little more fun of trying to get the kids engaged in science. So for example, we had an engineering build program called Battle of the Boats, where the kids were given just a pile of materials and 45 minutes to build a boat that needed to go across a certain distance and then also put rocks on it and see how much it could hold. And then there was points for style and creativity. So it's not necessarily following like a next generation science standard as our school programs would do. But again, any way that we can get the kids more involved in any STEM seems worth it to us.
Sounds good.
Okay, so I didn't know if you had an opinion on the type of programming, or as long as we sort of stick to that STEM region, we were gonna be fine.
Sounds excellent.
Okay.
Very much appreciate it.
I have pictures if you want to see what they did. It was, I mean, they were The
Very good.
colorful foam blowing up, you know, little mini explosions.
Oh, yeah,
That was
exploding
awesome.
things are always really popular with kids. So we have a chemistry program we do where they get to learn about reactions and make pop rockets fly and make elephant toothpaste and Coke and Mentos so they can see how
It was
different
awesome.
reactions will work.
Yeah,
Very good.
That's great.
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, well, great, then we'll continue to work with you, Heather,
All
on
right.
this.
Excellent.
Can I just make one comment?
Yeah.
And I don't want to get into a big discussion about this, and Mike said I should keep my mouth shut.
So we've been warned, is what you're
No,
saying?
no. And the reason I asked the question about what streams you picked, and I know the science is there on the road salts, and we tried to do I want to say an experiment with the brine, and I think when people say brine, they think salt and water, and even the state of New Hampshire, as the state highway department, is not using straight brine, salt and water. You have to add magnesium or something else to it, and yes, that is true. I want to get somebody to come in that's more an expert on this whole thing, but no, because I don't explain it very well, apparently, but. It doesn't work all the time, and it doesn't cut that, because you still have to put salt down at some point on the road, because at some point it stops working, the straight brine. And another comment I wanted to make was, the reason I want to test some roads, some brooks that go over town roads, because those are all state roads. And I can tell you that the state puts down as much salt in one storm than we do the town does the entire winter. That's true, that is a fact. We maybe will use this, we had a really bad winter this winter, and I think we used like 550 tons of salt on all our roads. The state will use 1,500 tons in this area in one storm. And we really can't have an effect on that, and because I take flat, and we use sand or even a mix, try to do that, so. And I just want to try to get some of these facts out. It's not the brine is not the end-all, be-all solution of keeping, and everybody has to be a part of it, the state and the town. And I don't think we're going to be able to affect,
And the motoring public.
Right.
Stay home during storms.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that the general public likes to be able to go to Walmart at 2 a.m. in their flip-flops
Yeah, in the
and not
middle of the
fall
night,
over
right, yeah.
in the middle of February. I get that, but, and then I don't disagree with you of, there needs to be some onus on the general population in terms of maybe don't drive in conditions you don't need to. That being said, I get you need to have emergency services and people still have jobs that they need to get to, and I'm very sympathetic to that, I genuinely am. In terms of the brining, I understand what you're saying. There are still conditions where brining will not work. Absolutely, I'm not going to argue that point. The point that we're trying to make is switching people to learn more about brining and to see if it is a reasonable solution for their area or even for some of the time.
Yeah.
And if we have people on tap that we can certainly have come and talk to the town crews if they want to. So New Hampshire T2 and the Green Snow Pro are a couple of the organizations that we work with, and we're happy to make those connections.
Yeah.
In terms of the state roads that you don't have as much control over, that is a little harder, and the hoops are more numerous to jump through. But some towns have tried to pursue low or no salt zones. It does take a tremendous amount of sign-offs because you have to get the fire department, the local EMT group, the police department, the school district to sign off on that, and it's not a Sisyphean task, but it's a Herculean one. But it is a possibility to try to get those state agents to adhere to a lower salt content, because you're not the only town to say that to me of well, we have no control over these state roads. 16 is another, and 25 are another roads where the towns are well, we don't have any control over that, and there is a way to get some control over it, but the hoops are numerous.
Josh, is that something, depending on how the DLJ stuff works out with them, is that something we could plan to fund, next year's our own water test for East Madison Road, East Shore Drive?
Yeah, that's the ones
that.
I was thinking about, exactly
Yeah.
that. We don't do any testing off our town roads for that. It's all state roads, and
But it would be.
and it seems like I don't want to say, I'm not blaming anybody, but, you know, I'm the DPW director, and we catch flack, you know, for using too much salt, and like I said, we use a tenth, not even a 1% of the amount of salt that the state is using, and so, you know, we always striving to use less salt, but and even like East Shore Drive, which goes right along, you know, we almost exclusively don't use salt, but there is times, I think there was twice this winter that we had to use salt because sand just wasn't doing it, and it was a sheet of ice, and the only way to get the snow pack down, or the ice, was to put a little salt. So we did a small mix. We usually do a 3-to-1 ratio of sand to salt, and as soon as we did that, somebody out walking there, hey, you're not supposed to put any salt along the. But, you know, the storm before that, you got people calling up saying, hey, my road's a sheet of ice, you need to do something about it, you know, so.
You can't win.
It's a
You
no-win
know,
situation.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the comment of catching hand grenades, whoever made that earlier,
Yeah.
is essentially what you're under.
So, I mean, to find the ultimate solution, and we have gone towards another thing that I think has worked out spectacular, is actually took one of those T2 class, and they were talking about, because we were using the straight brine, they're like, and the way we were doing it wasn't right, you know, it wasn't doing, and it wasn't for us, you know, we figured that out pretty quickly, but we're using we actually spray a molasses mix on our salt that makes it work at a lower level, a colder temperature, and when we do put out the salt, and it also helps it stick to the road instead of getting the bounce coming off into the ditches. So that's trying, you know, using less salt that way, and it really has worked fantastic for us the last 2 years.
Yeah, there are some creative solutions that other towns and municipalities, you know, throughout the country have been using. My favorite one is Wisconsin. The cheese brine leftover
Yeah,
is
I
what
saw that.
they're using to recycle. So they're
My favorite one's that one in Japan where they put the heated underground pipes under there so the snow doesn't. I wish we could do that.
Yeah, yeah. So there's a lot of more creative solutions out there. But if you want to be connected to some resources, just go ahead and give us a holler, because we have a whole Salt Responsibly campaign that our education coordinator is a part of.
I think you should give it to the state.
We have tried, and like I said, I am not unsympathetic to the plight of everybody's got the same complaint of they have no control over the state roads, and the states just are dropping tons of salt. I mean, I've got the OSSP group telling me that they'll go on the side of the road and shovel up salt and stick it in bags and take it home and use it on their own properties.
Yeah.
So,
I think this is like 800 pound. I try to think what it's like 800 pounds per lane mile or something like that they're putting down of salt. And we put down, when we do it, we're doing like 50 pounds a lane mile, and it does the same thing. It just takes a little longer.
Yeah.
Global warming, Joe. We got it all hanging.
Yeah, so we'll hang in there for it.
Okay, thanks again. It was very informative.
Yes. And thank you again for having us. We love coming and chatting with you guys about water quality and education.
Okay,
I love to give my spiel.
very good, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Very good. Okay, Rick, you have any comments?
You're up.
Thank you for joining us, by the way.
No, I would just comment, and probably Mike could give us more detail. The filter systems are being installed on our well. I noticed the people here today, I don't sure what they were doing, but they were pulling water and
Yeah, that's all part of the testing.
they just tested.
Another round, that's the spring water tests.
But the filter systems are moving forward, and we'll have a more comprehensive report next month.
Great. Very good, thank you. Planning board.
Planning board was pretty easy. We form in April, and so we didn't meet, and today's the 1st, so we don't meet until the 7th.
Okay. That's easy. All right.
It's all Kate's fault.
Adminis-
It's all Kate's fault, because we haven't met.
Administrative?
No, because people don't come to the meeting.
Yeah.
So, my task you wanted some kind of
Secure box.
secure box for money from the donation box that we're gonna do for the wildlife, to try to kind of boost up some of our accounts. So I came up with two. And I was gonna order them off of Amazon, but then I said, oh, I better wait and ask everybody what they wanna do. So this one is just a small, simple box. We can put we don't put tips up there, we can put whatever we want, that's just a,
Right.
but you can put whatever you want, it has a key, set, it can be locked. That one was $11.95. This one was actually kind of cool, because you can write what you want to put on there for your donation, and that one is $40. So I don't know what people want to do, but I kind of researched that.
Can you change what the first box says on it?
This one?
Yeah, is it
Yeah,
maybe
oh yeah,
change the whole
it doesn't come, I mean, I'm sure I could put something over it if it did, so I'm not worried
Right,
about
just
that.
saying, like, if we changed it per event for what the fundraiser
Yep.
was.
So the first box is $1,100?
No, $11.95 I think it was.
Really
$11.95.
No, $11.99.
Not a big difference.
$12.
Yeah,
And I think you can get it off of Amazon, because I have an
okay.
Amazon account, so
I
it
did
would be
the
free
same
shipping.
Thank you.
All right.
Must be an age thing.
Which one do you think? Is-
You guys tell
Well,
me, I don't
I
care, I
think the more
was getting
substantial
a
box would
locked
be better.
box.
Probably better with the $40 one.
You have money in your budget for supplies,
Just a
still
fucking-
have $333.50,
People can drop money.
$335.50.
For donations.
All right, do you want to
So
make
it's
a
up- do
motion
you wanna
for?
see-
Sure, I'll make a motion that we buy the $40 lockbox for our donations.
Okay.
Need a second?
I'll second it. Okay, all in favor? Yes. Okay,
And I think that one's on Amazon too, and I think I'll get free shipping on that
okay.
one.
Very good.
Excuse me, Ralph, just a quick question now. Where will this box be and who's responsible for getting it?
I will take responsibility 100%, because I'm gonna bring it back here and leave it locked, and then when Linda and I will count it together, so there's a two-person counting.
So as far as I know, is it gonna be used more than just at the,
You can.
Animal
You
thing.
can use it for anything else you do. If you decide to do something else
Right.
somewhere, a home week or something, you can use it for that. It's your box. I mean, I'm not gonna give it out to everybody.
Well, to describe the issue, is that we, according to regulations, we're not able to make charitable donations. And this year, and in particular to organizations for educational purposes. So the annual meeting we had, they approved the $500, but they said, don't do it anymore. So as a result of that, we're making an effort to do fundraising, which will permit us to make donations for activities such as
And Mike had suggested too that we put out a letter to some of the businesses in town,
Right.
and so that needs to be done probably pretty soon if we're,
correct.
well, no, because we won't be for this year, but we just need to
Yeah, I mean-
have a date that we annually put out that appeal,
Mhm.
so that it doesn't get overlooked or forgotten.
Right, okay, makes sense. All right, the account balances.
Hold on, Ralph.
Just one more moment, because
Okay.
I didn't have a chance under public comment. Mike, I just talked to Holly today, and it appears that the school's gonna do that floor project this summer. So, they're getting quotes now. So I suspect that maybe we might wanna be at the firehouse again. Just a heads up.
Yeah, we'll do whatever we need to
Yeah,
do,
yeah.
but I haven't heard anything from the school. Not that
Well,
I
have-
would, but I
I
haven't.
went in and got the forms to reserve the gym that I do every year, but it's better to have it reserved than
Right.
Do you know
not
when
have it.
that's supposed to take place?
What's that?
Do you know when they're gonna start doing that, just so I
No,
know?
she said they're still collecting quotes, but she said this summer. That's all that she could tell me.
Just so I know what to do in
Okay,
the
thank you.
meetings. Okay,
It might be good too, because of all the steps that, like, I didn't know you had to go in and reserve the gym. Then maybe we have a procedural, something written down so that when somebody else
Oh, we have the forms upstairs.
Well, but
To
first you
request.
do this, and then you do this, and then you do this, so that it goes smoothly. And,
We have the request forms for the gym upstairs. Anybody.
right, but whoever, if it isn't Ted that's doing it, and do they know that they have to go in and do that? And that's what I'm saying, that if you say you have to contact the wildlife place in February and set up the dates, and then in May you reserve the gym, and then
Are you
you,
firing him?
no, but I'm,
Okay, okay.
no, but it just seems like, I'm always surprised at the steps that I wouldn't have thought about if it was up to me to do it. And so it might be good to have that written down somewhere, so that if somebody else decides to
I'll
take it
put it in
on.
my will.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, Ted. You're gonna will it.
All right. Reviewing the account balances. Effectively, there's no change.
And it's only it's only from the 17th, that was a half a statement from Camden Bank.
Okay, so one statement is out of sync. But essentially, the account balances are the same as last month, except for some loose change.
Yeah.
Make a motion to
Oh,
adjourn.
no, you gotta go over that.
Oh, I'm sorry. There's a
Nope,
couple-
that's okay.
there's a couple other things.
Address the planning board and the conservation commission.
This is Saco Headways Alliance. Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities Program, administered by FEMA, has officially terminated on April 4th, 2025. The decision includes the cancellation of all BRIC applications for years 2020 through 2023. Subsequently, any grants not yet distributed to states, tribes, territories, local communities are to be returned either to U.S. Treasury or the Disaster Relief Fund. So if we have anything going on, we're not going to get the money.
Right, it came to you guys, it came to the planning board too, so it's in your package.
Do we need to set up a workshop based on the fact that we're getting the easement information on Monday that we need to address fairly quickly?
Don't know. I don't know whether we have funds under that program that we're looking for.
I don't remember anything.
I don't think
No.
so.
We didn't
All right,
apply.
so
I don't
so it
think
may
so.
may not apply to us, so. So
No, she's talking
She's talking
about
about
the
the
easement.
When they
A
send
workshop.
A workshop
whatever they're
date.
sending us on Monday.
Yeah, I was thinking we should.
15th?
Hold on, I thought, I wouldn't schedule anything that week right now, because I'm trying to do a ZBA meeting, a special meeting that week. And I'm waiting for dates for people to get back to me, and that's one of them.
This is the Conservation Commission, not the ZBA.
Hey,
Well, if we get the date before they decide, then that's it.
this is a,
What about the 22nd then?
that would be better, that week would be better.
So then, as soon as we get something on Monday, if Kate can, we don't know what format we're gonna get in.
I
but
don't even know what it is.
Well, right, but whatever it is, if you can send it out to all of us, and then,
Well, why can't we have a meeting immediately after getting the information? Within that week?
were you thinking next week, the
Yeah.
8th?
The
Yeah.
7th, we have planning board that night, and the 8th, I'm not here at all that day.
Well, we could have it during,
I can't do it during workday, not right now, not with the ZBA stuff, I'm kind of,
well, how about 4:30?
which day now are we going for?
Let's assume that they're gonna give us something. How about Wednesday?
4:30, we gotta be done, so because you're at 7, so.
You're gonna buy dinner?
Not me.
So that's
I'll be here all
the
day.
If Bobby's
The
ready to come
7th or the
over with
8th?
his food truck.
I was suggesting the 7th.
Okay.
As long as we're out of here by their meeting at
What date
7.
now?
The
7.
7th.
That's
Oh, no, 5:30.
Oh, you're 5:30, that's right, you're steering committee, yeah, no, that doesn't work, Ralph, sorry, they
How
have a
about the
steering committee.
8th? How about the 8th?
I'm not here the 8th at all that day.
I'd like to make it timely that we respond immediately.
What about the 6th?
6th, you could do it the 6th.
Well, we don't know whether or not they're going to give it to us.
Well, right, but if they
But
don't
they
give it
don't.
to us
We're
by
at
Monday,
work,
then
Jeff,
we just
anyway.
don't have a meeting.
All right,
Right.
Tuesday is okay with me.
Okay, so we're moving to the
The
6th.
6th? 6 at 4:30?
You know, the problem is, it doesn't give us any time to look it over, but we'd all be
We'll
looking
go
it
through
over
it.
at the same time.
Right, but do you, I mean, I think everybody wants the same goal, to preserve the property and have a workable easement. I mean, Upper Saco Valley has a history of doing wonderful easement work, so I don't think they have nefarious goals here.
Well-
But I think we just have to get, like you say, common language and common ground, and work together and get some document that gels for both of us.
Well, I can
But they
tell you.
haven't answered any of my emails. That's the problem.
Well,
I've been sending them stuff.
We're
and
all
I get
dealing with
nothing.
adults here, and like I tell my kids, words have meaning, and if you
Right.
use them, you better mean what you say.
Right,
Well,
Statements were made, printed on paper, that sound like they don't want to work with us. And, more importantly, they don't need to.
that's exactly where I was coming from. And the fact that they haven't communicated with us.
it's very frustrating, I'm
And
not,
my level of frustration reached its peak
yeah, no,
when I got into that. And I think the confrontation, sometimes confrontation is good, because it gets people to respond. And I have to acknowledge I was aggressive.
no,
and
no, I
all
thought
that,
you were
but
diplomatic.
The intent was to get something done.
No, you were diplomatic and you
D2 Panda.
you stated the facts, and that's all you can do.
Okay. Well, we'll see what happens Monday,
I'll make a
and
motion to
we'll
adjourn.
plan to meet on Tuesday, unless something.
Here, this is the Board of Selectmen at 4:30 here.
On-
Thursday.
On this.
No, they don't meet till
No,
the
not till the
13th.
13th, hon. You're good.
The selectmen's meeting is the
On
13th.
28th.
People don't know that.
You sure?
The
Positive.
6th, yeah, we just had the meeting
Because they're
on
gonna sign my
on the
tax
29th.
warrant on that day, the 13th.
I did payroll. Look, your paycheck is dated dated last week.
I have it on both, on the schedule on both the 6th
Yeah, you
and
don't
the
wanna see it
13th.
Is there something going on that we don't know about?
Is there something we don't know?
Let me check if she's posted something I don't
19,
know
20.
about. Hold on. Ow.
No, it's definitely the 13th.
Nothing that I know about.
You don't have to go upstairs. It's definitely the
I should just
13th,
gone to the posting board.
100%.
Just went to the posting board, not upstairs. Just Make sure.
But I mean, I think we have to
Yeah, I
think
have
about that too, that they
three
don't
meetings
need
on the schedule For
us.
some reason, for Board of Selectmen from me. Not sure why.
They got plenty of money.
I don't know what that is, Kasha, there's nothing posted.
I'll ask you.
Okay. Assuming that the room is available, it's Tuesday, the 6th. All right, at 4:30,
Provided I get something.
provided we get the information.
And I will email it all to you once I get
Make a motion to adjourn?
Now,
Okay.
Okay.
it. You're in a hurry.
providing you get the information on Monday.
Right,
Right,
right.
If nothing comes Monday, by the end of the day Monday, that meeting will be
I
canceled.
will send
Correct,
out an email.
correct.
It's gonna be a lot of paperwork, could be a lot of paper. to
No,
have
I
to-
doubt it.
You don't think?
No, I think we're gonna get minimal information.
All I know is that she took the two easements and combined them into one, because Attorney Levin couldn't understand the easements. Their easement that they submitted to us, and then Conservation's easement, which was the way we wanted it to read. They couldn't understand that, so they made her put it into one. I have not seen that to date, so I don't know what she did.
And I remember way back in the beginning, even Doug Brunel was saying, well, this easement is not a good template because there's so
It was
much
their own
stuff,
easement.
stuff in here that we don't really use, or don't really need.
Right.
And that they were gonna clean it up and get us something else,
And
and
Mike
they never
Moran said
did.
the same thing when
Right.
he was the director.
So it seems to be all around all the commercial aspects of it that,
All
but I
right,
don't think either one of us want them.
I'm anxious to get out of here.
All right, so Mike made a motion on the floor. Who's seconding it?
I'll second it.
Linda must have one of
To adjourn at 6.
them. Linda must have one of them, because I'm
All right.
Okay. Huh?
everybody else in favor.
Everybody else in
It
favor?
was a
Yeah,
fun
everybody's in
meeting.
favor, right?
Next May.
Thanks, Mike.
Good.